Hello, everybody. I'm Lucifer. Hi, I'm Papa Lucifer. Welcome to the best day of your life. The best day of your life. The best moment in your life. The best time to be in the space that you need to be into with yourself. Under the strawberry satellite or under the strawberry moon, whatever space that you're in, understand, okay, cool. Under the strawberry moon, under the strawberry satellite. Over the last couple of days, we've been getting deep into the aspects of the irrational solidarity. We've been getting into the transitional conflicts. Last night, we got into standards and assessing your standards from that narrative of staying in that safe space and becoming to your higher self. And today I wanted to get into reflection, assessment, and the power of learning that every fated meeting, every relationship, every meeting, everything that has came into your space from the beginning till right now has been something that has been based on your unseen. Everything coming into your space, everything that comes into our space is based on our unseen. Over the last couple of weeks, over the last couple of months, if you've been tuning into the G.O.D, Alchemist, my YouTube channel, tuning in to Friday night lectures, you've been getting deeper and deeper into the topic, getting deeper and deeper into the aspects of shadow work, dealing with our shadows, understanding our shadows. And tomorrow will be no different. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll be getting into wanderlust or the shedding of the false mind. This is a moment of reflection. We can go back and forth and say that the moon is a satellite. A satellite is programmed based on, so if you look into your natal chart, is we have to learn how to use these aspects and use everything as a tool for what it is. So use the example of the strawberry moon or the strawberry satellite. Let's use the strawberry moon or the strawberry satellite. That means it's the programs of the subconscious. That means the programs of our subconscious lays weight to the aspects of what's crowning into our space based on our sun sign or what we irradiate. So our unseen gives the irradiation to the unseen or that satellite or your subconscious. That unseen aspect is given life. It's given life. It's given energy. It's given focus. It's given everything that it needs based on your unseen. So then you look at your rising sign, whatever your rising sign is. That is the energy or the catalyst that will be used in order for you to move forward. Go into the aspects of your natal chart. Go into the natal chart and look at your south node. Your south node is what you're stepping away from and the lessons that you've learned and the experiences that you've already mastered. The north node is going to be telling you the things that you're coming to learn into this cycle. Everything works for you. Every fated meeting, every person, every place, everything that's come into your life has been there for a reason. What we have to let go, what we have to learn how to do is let go of control. Let go of control. Let go of trying to control everything based on when it comes to this sense of control. A lot of times we try to control. You only can control what you know. You only can control what you know. You cannot control the unknown until you have went into your unknown. Yesterday, remember, I said that point of no return. It's time to let go of trying to keep control of what you know or what you thought you knew. Time to let it go. It's going to be it's been a very emotional roller coaster. Some of y'all been getting beat up and shit been hitting y'all upside the head and making you feel all types of different ways. You've been seeing things in that space. Some of you are in a space right now where you're in a deep moment of reflection and you're like, oh my God, I never really thought that this was going to happen, or I would be in this position, or I could actually be this aspect. But then I never thought I could be happy. I never thought I could be love. I never thought love would come to me in this way. And then based on the control of your known, how do you face it? How do you face it? This is where we get into the aspects of that delusional sense. It's time to assess your standards. Last night we got deep into those standards. God Hour Show, it's up now. It's all over. It's on my page. But I want you to look at the aspects of a lot of our standards as we're going into this aspect of shedding away this false mind. A lot of our standards are only based on how we feel or how we maintain within a certain pattern. So a lot of times when we set our standards, or we set our tone, or we set our compass to that due north, we're looking at it through the filters of our wounds. So the only aspect that we look at based on the filters of our wounds is naturally, most of the time, whenever I was sitting inside of a space with myself, use that as an example, when I was sitting inside of a space with myself, the only thing that I could actually say when it came to me really assessing was, I simply did not want to go back to how I began. I simply did not want to go back to how I was raised. But here's the thing. All of your relationships are reflections of the first relationship. All of your jobs are the reflections, and we looking at correspondences, all of your jobs, all of the tasks that you've taken on are reflections of the first task that you ever took on. All of your relationships, friendships, they're all reflections of the first relationship. That void that you continuously try to fill, that void that you're trying to fill, are the aspects that you didn't receive or something that you lost in that first relationship. That aspect of that first relationship. The first time that you felt an emotion, you felt or you experienced emotion. The first time that you experienced sadness. The first time that you experienced insecurity, even if you did not know what it was. That was some of your first times in coming into the emotional aspects, being locked into that space. And ever since then, you've been running rampant with yourself. Trying to play catch up. I said it last week in a live. You've been running neck and neck with your trauma. I said it last Thursday during the God Hour Show when we did a special edition on Thursday. You've been running neck and neck with your trauma. That means your trauma has always sat in the supporting seat. Your shadow always sits in the supporting seat. Don't believe me? Think about whenever you're about to do something and you hit that point of no return and you decide to go look back. What are you going to look back at? Your shadow. That event, the first time an event stopped you from doing something. The first time that something stopped you. The first time that something checked you. The first thing that something challenged you. That's the first thing that you're going to look at. You're always going to go back to it because it's still there. It's still a memory in the false mind. When we get into the science of it, when we get into the science of this aspect with ourselves, we understand that the false mind is the perception of all of our thoughts, all of our identities, everything that we've carried up to this point. So when you really think about, well, every time I give you the question, when you're thinking, what are you listening to? There's always something that's distorting what you're listening to. There's always something that was distorting what I was listening to. When it came time for me to listen to my higher self, and this is when we get into the aspects of the gods are mad at me, or the gods are mad at me, or anything. The gods are mad at me. My ancestors are mad at me. It's because your false mind is that filter, that handicap, that crutch, that false mind, that trauma is your handicap, your crutch. So no matter how far ahead that you seem to get, every time you look back, all you're looking at is the shadow of the discord of the things that you lost. You didn't lose anything. You shed it. It shed. It fell away. It needed to fall away. I'm here to let you know that that shit needed to fall away. Because if it didn't fall away, how would you learn the lesson? How would you learn to become the authentic aspect of yourself? How would you learn to be able to better understand what it needs for you to do inside of the space you're at? We have to stop going into that negative zone with ourselves when we're looking at things like, I lost my job, I lost my house, I'm about to lose this, I keep losing in relationships, I keep losing all of these things. Change your perception. You're not losing. What are you learning? We understand the losses are moments to learn. We understand that the victories, even in the victory, you had to let go of something in order for that victory to come into play. Think about that. Think about that. We understand that the losses are moments to learn, our trajectory, our standard, gain transparency. In our victories, we had to let go of something in order to win. You had to let go of something in order to get that victory. You had to let go of that aspect of yourself to get that victory, to come into that luck, to come into that space. Until we learn the value of letting go, you will never embrace the victory of simply being in the now. The simple victory of you being in the now. The simple victory of me being able to wake up now. For me to be able to wake up now at 5 o'clock, 4:30, between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. For me to be able to wake up now into knowing all of the steps that it took for me to get to this point, and to be able to appreciate everything that's within my space that brought me to this point of my now, of being in this moment, of learning to assess, of gaining that transparency, being able to embrace these variables that have led me to the point of where I'm at now. And I can use like the accomplishment in the physical is nothing like the reward to how I feel in my spiritual aspect, in my emotional aspects, in my emotional intelligences. But I know that I had to make those decisions. I know that I had to make those decisions because that's a part of me accepting my role. What's my position? You only can go so long with yourself saying that you are one aspect, or you want to be the god, you want to be the goddess, you want to be the titan, you want to be the chaos, you got to accept the role that comes with it. This is your responsibility. Remember, as I've always said, everything that goes into that space is based upon your unseen. Everything that you've taken into these spaces is based upon your unseen. It's based upon what you have not dealt with. That's what lays root to the intentions and your manifestations of everything that comes into your space. So until you look at those aspects, I guarantee you from experience that everything is only going to remain in the same habit, the same pattern, the same behavior. Everything's going to react to everything's responding to your pattern, your habits, and your behavior. If you face it with conflict, it cancels out the lesson. This is how a lot of us keep repeating these lessons. You keep trying to meet at that space. You keep trying to meet at that middle point with your own conflicts. You're looking through your own conflicts, therefore you're using your own conflicts. So every time you bring a conflict to the center, if you look at we look at fission and the collision, what happens? Everything cancels out. Everything in that space now is canceled out. Now it has to start over. This is how a lot of our relationships, this is how I look at a lot of my relationships and the arguments and the conversations and everything that happens. Everything in your space gives you that example. Think about when you was at your job. I can think about when I was at my job and being at a restaurant, working in restaurants, and kitchens are nothing but chaos. We thrive in chaos. So every time that the chaos ensued, either I was going to accept the chaos and work through it, or I was going to be upset and allow my own internal conflicts to stop me from dealing with it. That's the same thing you're doing now when you're coming into transmuting your energy to the space. It's time to shed. It's time to shed. It's time to shed. It's time to shed. You know what you've done. You need nothing outside of you to validate what you've done. The only time that we look for validation outside of ourselves is really when we're unsure about it. When I started really doing the reflections and validating myself and studying and really being honest with myself, that's when I noticed the synchronicities. That's when I started noticing the synchronization. You can't force synchronization. You can't force a connection. You can't force something to be something that it's not ready to do. All you can do is whisper to it. That's the aspect of me being Papa Lucifer. All I can do is whisper to you. All I can do is give you the suggestion. It's up to you to how you gonna interpret it. It's up to you to how you're gonna interpret it. And then the only thing that I have to do, my only purpose and job is to stand on my square. Similar to like if you're in a conversation and you say something, the only thing that you have is to stand on your square. But why does it bother you when something's direct or how it comes to you? What do you remember from that aspect? Some of us are learning boundaries, privacy, and all of those, a lot of these deeper aspects, those come from those internal wounds. I remember giving an example as we're doing a reflection. I remember for myself for a long period of time to where the value of my privacy was, I didn't understand where the value in my privacy came from. I remember being younger. I remember being, I want to say like around 9, 10, or 11. And I remember we had a home computer. We had a home computer. Home computer, you know, we had a home computer in the hood. I had a home computer. I remember every time that I would get on the computer that my pops' site was like 6'2". I'm 6'1". My pops towered over me, and my pops would like be looking over my shoulder as I was on the computer. Look over my shoulder as I was on the computer. It used to irritate the shit out of me. I would look back and I would just look back, and he'd be like, oh, I'm just looking. And in honesty, he was just looking. But what was bothering me then, I didn't understand until later on when it came into the aspects of how I valued my privacy and what privacy meant to me. Because up to that point, I remember our pops was so paranoid, and the only way that he knew how to do that providing and protecting, it came from how he was valued. It came from a lot of times the way that he wished that he was provided and protected and looked over, and someone paid attention to him and made sure and looked at himself. That was the same thing that he was reflecting into that space. So now I get older. Now I get older with myself, and now I'm faced with aspects that challenge my privacy and what I value in my privacy and how I look at my aspects of privacy. But I wasn't acting, but through how I was speaking was coming through the same wound that I did not assess. So when I finally learned how to stand in my position, I was like, I'm a fairly private person. I'm fairly private. If you ask me a question, I will tell you. But other than that, I'm not going to overly reach or try to bring things into my space, because at a lot of point in times, when it came to that first bout with privacy, I felt as long as I was open, nobody could change the perception of me, because I was not ready to accept the perceptions of others. You see how these corresponds go to each other? All of this shit weaves together and creates the false mind. All of this shit weaves together and creates your false mind. All of those, the mind has over 1 million receptors, and each synapses is over 1,000 receptors. So think about if only 10% of your mind is online until you go into that deeper aspect of yourself. 10% of your mind is the false mind that is online. So think about everything that you've been through in this cycle, in every past cycle, now is in that 10%, that space of 10%. All of the receptors and everything that snaps online keeps creating the same damn narrative. And if you don't take the moment to adjust that programming, that subconscious, like using that example of the strawberry satellite, where it's going to be a very emotional time for you, and all you're reading is it's going to be a very emotional time, I guarantee you will look at, ooh, it's going to be an emotional time. You're going to be looking for a cop-out for your emotions. It's the moon, it got me real emotional. It's retrograde, it got me real emotional. No, it doesn't. You have yourself emotional. It's time to assess that pattern. It's time to assess that learn. Endless. Until you leave here, it will be an endless amount of heat put onto you until you learn what you need to learn. Everything outside of you can say, ooh, everything outside of me is a reflection of me, right? Like, yes. But if I'm looking at it through the old false filter, or my false mind, and we're going to get deep into this tomorrow, and I'm looking through that filter, then all I can see is, whether it's my nieces, nephews, kids, friends, relationships, whatever it may be, I'm only going to see it through, I don't want to go back. I don't want no one to experience. I don't want this to happen. I don't want this to happen, based on what I know. So I will stay in a constant cycle. I stayed in a constant cycle of trying to control everything. Some things I was aggressive to how I controlled it based on how much I knew. In other things, in other aspects, I was really passive aggressive to how I tried to control it. But it's all in accepting it. Your standard has nothing to do with the external anything. Your standard should not be primarily focused on external things setting the tones of your value, setting the tones of the quality of your life. When you get stuck in that, you get stuck in the cycle of never getting out of it. It's time to acknowledge. You won't acknowledge that cycle until something gets really, really emotional and it's a breakdown. What you use to get into that space, the same thing you got to use to get out. It's time to assess. It's time to reflect. It's time to look at everything that's came into your space, at least over these last 6 months. Use the last 6 months. Don't try to get all extra. Use the last 6 months. What have you seen? What has came into your space? What is it showing you about your pattern? What is it showing you about your habits? What is it showing you about your behavior? What is it taking you back to? Some of you are looking at, ooh, it's been this many years and I never make it past this many years at a job. I never make it past this many years of a relationship. Why? Because at a point in time, The way you viewed a relationship, the way you viewed your job, the way you viewed these things was based on the end all and done all. That's going to be my fixer. That's what's going to help me. That's what's going to put me in the right position. That's going to be what's going to set my tone for my quality of life. But even in that same thought process, this is how we get stuck. Even in that thought process, did you do what you needed to do? Did you listen? Did you listen in the aspects of response, or were you listening through the ears of your conflicts? The shit that you're fighting, the shit that you're not dealing with. How did you look at that situation? You're thinking that motherfucker betrayed you, cheated on you, was being spiteful, being rude, arrogant, and all of these things. Was it really that? Or were they simply reflecting yourself back to you? Was it really, oh my God, or was it just your false pride being shown back to you? Something to make you look at yourself. When I say I've been through that process, and over the last year alone was like the solidifying of the newest aspects of myself to where I'm at now, where I'm in myself now. And there's still learning to do. There's still aspects that come up. And now it's like that Mandela effect kicks in. I talked about that last Friday. And now I'm in a different space. You're going to come to this point of no return with yourself. It's time to assess. It's time to stop. It's time to stop hindering yourself based in the false mind. It's time to stop wandering, but your mind is still, because it's good for your mind to wander, because that's when you'll find things. But a lot of times we have this we're wandering, but we have the lust. We still have these lusts, the urges. We still have these aspects that we have not assessed yet. That's where that lust comes in. And that's where the false mind reigns in your space. It's time to assess you. It's time to assess yourself. I desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to tap into that greatness of yourself. With me, hello again, I'm Lucifer. With me, whether it's you want to set up a consultation, you want to set up a reading, my readings are mini consultations, you want to get that shadow work consultation done, you know there's some things that you know to yourself, you have to be honest with yourself, that's the only way you're going to be ready, and you're like, there's things that I cannot assess, and I simply need, because that's all that I do, that's all that a healer does, or a teacher does, is lead you back to yourself. All I'm going to do is help you assess and line that shit up so you can start doing that work. That's all I can do. But you have to be ready for that type of honesty with yourself. It's time for you to grow. It's time for you to be fucking great. I'll see y'all on Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time once again. Godical Alchemist, the YouTube channel. The link will be up a little bit later. I want to see you be the fucking best. I want to see you grow. I love you. We love us. Ashe.